All right, guys, we're furthering our in-depth look at characterization and looking at the 5 types of conflict. So this works in conjunction with motivation like we were talking about yesterday. So the previous video, in case you missed it, was about direct and indirect characterization and determining how that might inform motive. So today we're looking at the next set of ideas that could possibly affect how a character's motive is determined and or changed or established, I guess. And it's 5 types of conflict. This should be a review. We've covered it before in previous classes, but I want to just make sure that we're clear on it. And we're thinking about it in terms of how it changes how characters are motivated. So the first type is person versus person. This is any time when you have an equal force of characters opposed by an equal force of character villains, or however you want to put it. It's pretty easy. Kid versus bully, that sort of thing. The next type is person versus society. This is anytime a character is opposed by a force larger than them that is intrinsic to the way that their culture works or society works. So for instance, like person versus racial constructs of society, person versus gender issues in society, person versus financial or class-based issues in society. Pretty easy to spot. The next one is person versus nature. And this is where we start to get a little sticky because there are 2 ways of thinking about person versus nature. And one of them is a way that you guys, I feel like, used to get confused with person versus self. So person versus nature goes 2 ways. One, it's person versus an intrinsical natural force like a disaster, forest fire, hurricane, global warming, da-da-da. Got it? The other is person versus disease or an infection, right? So sometimes you guys want to call that person versus self because the call is coming from inside the house, so to speak. The disease is inside the person, but that's not true. It's nature. All right, person versus self. Inner conflict. All right, anytime a character is in some sort of inner turmoil, that's person versus self. Person versus supernatural technology. This is pretty easy to find or define and see. It's anytime that there's some sort of like ghost / superhero / alien / the computers are taking over, that kind of thing. Now, we need to think about this in terms of motive. And again, it winds up being recursive in that, 1, a person's motives are revealed through their conflicts, but also their conflicts define what motivates them, right? What their motives might be. So you kind of have to think about both sides of that tally sheet again and decide, is this something that's revealing or forming? And is this fundamentally changing what we already know about the character? In short fiction, it's a little harder to develop. Generally, this is a character change over time thing occurs in longer fiction, and we'll get there. But right now, we're just thinking, like, does this conflict affect how a person's motivated, or is it just revealing what we already know to be true? All right, carry on.